I think it's very important for the family of Elan restorers to realise that pretty much anywhere in the house is fair game for storing fragile and delicate parts. So I've found this double bed to be ideal for storing these doors that have been painted. Thought we ought to clarify that point. Got the bracket that holds the door lock. I've fixed on this handle, and I had to modify this particular one to put this little screw in place, which I think just stops that from pivoting that way in that direction if it weren't there. And you do see some of these locks without that fixing, or yeah, they wouldn't normally have that fixing in, because I think these locks were used on different cars, Austin A60 or something. So I've made sure I've done that and fixed this inner door handle on with the original fixings. Seen these a couple of different shapes on the earlier cars. So this little piece fixes, sorry, I'll put it on there so you might be able to see it better. Just a little tab of metal, the spring, that fixes to this hole on the top of this bracket on the inside, and the screw is a Posipan UNF thread held on with a nylock. So that fixes in there, and this little spring hooks onto, I think it will be, yeah, that's a good question. Oh, there it is, this little tab here on the handle. Okay, so I'll get that fixed on. Oh, and the lock mechanism fits on to the bracket thus, and is held with Posipan head screws. So I'll fix that in place and hook that little spring on, and we'll see what we've got then. I've got that fixed in now, so I've clamped this little bracket. You can see the spring coming off it, and what that spring does is it returns the handle in that direction. So that way is sort of dealt with by the lock, but this way it's that little spring that's pulling it up. I've just lightly screwed that in place, haven't clamped it down yet till I put it in the car. And there's that screw. Oh, it's all covered in fingerprints. This is the original piece, by the way. It's been re-chromed, so you can see some flaws in it, but I don't know if you can see that in the reflections, but it's pretty good. Good enough, I thought. So I think I can put that on the car now. This part slips onto this area. There's 3 bobbins. I've cleared out the threads. I have fitted this before it had the top coat, so hopefully you don't have to do too much fettling. It's screwed on with UNC, quarter UNC screws with big washers and lock washers. Big washers and little lock washers. And massive holes in this, so that this, you can imagine all of that can move around for whatever adjustments required. Hence the big washers. So there, that's it. You've got the door lock. So I've fitted this. There's a plate that goes on the inside, and these screws go through into that plate. The plate's threaded, so if you loosen these, that will just move around. Again, it's got big holes. It's got a little aluminium, or a very thin aluminium plate at the back, which was on the original, so I've just replicated it and just cleaned this up. That's the original. Just cleaned it up with wire. Cleaned it up with wire wool. Fix the door handle. It just goes around this, so as you saw that was working before, so and just bolts in place. So one of them here, sorry, out of focus, and one of them through that hole there. You can just see it's a bit dark. Okay, so I have some shiny bits on the door now. I've tightened that up. Okay, there's no seals yet, but so I don't want to slam it too hard. Just checking how this rear window slider goes in, and it's pretty clear I should have worked this out before, because this must be in place before this part goes on. So I'm just going to have to take that off, fix this on, because clearly that little latch, window latch mechanism has to be behind there. So that was a bit stupid of me. I'm sure I heard someone, or read someone say, when they were rebuilding their Elan, they must have built it about 3 times. I know the feeling. So pulled that bit back off. These are little spacers almost, fixings that go behind. I think they must be just to space it off. I'm putting them back because they were definitely there. And the bolts, I'm reusing the bolts. I'm cleaning them up. I will put some anti-corrosion stuff on them. But they've got really thin heads. So they've had their heads thinned down. As I say, I will put some anti-corrosion stuff on. And they had a big washer and a lock washer like that. So that's what fixes this channel on. So I'll get that fixed on. That's fixed back on now. So this window slide bracket, I haven't tightened up yet. It's got these big washers that cover the big holes, and that's back in, so the little lever is through that hole, in fact. And I've also fixed this front one in. Again, you can just see the edges of these big holes. It's just sat down at the moment. It might have to come up. I've had to cut that washer in half, and what I've found to get this to align with the window frame, which I can show you now. So that's the door fully closed. So I've got this gap between the window frame and the chrome window slider, pretty parallel, but I had to put 2 of the spacers in at the bottom and no spacers at the top. It's still clear here, so pretty okay with that, and I've you can adjust the angle of it because of those big holes, so I've got it aligned quite nicely, I think. I will fix in the window lift mechanism. Might find it all has to come out to get that in, who knows. And then we'll see if we can get some glass in it, see if it all works. These are the components of the window mechanism that the window slides up and down and is supported by this mechanism and controlled by this mechanism. I seem to remember someone saying it was a mechanism used in a London taxi. No idea whether that's true, might be just my dodgy memory. So it's got this scissor bit, I'll call it that. There's a stop on it which is very positively stops the mechanism. I think that's in the fully up position. So these 2 parts run on the glass, on the bottom edge of the glass, and they've got like a cone and a spring behind them. So maybe that's a bit clearer. And this pin is riveted in the back. I have to say they're loose. I don't know if you can see that rotating, but they are loose, some of these. I doubt they were supposed to be loose. I don't know whether I can rivet them in a bit more. Let's have a look at this one. Yeah, that one's not spinning so easily, and this looks quite worn. I'm not going to do anything with these because I think the amount of use they get is probably going to be okay. There's a pivot in the centre. It seems to me, so I cleaned it up, there's a very thin black coloured washer which might be the same material as this other washer, which could be some sort of graphite lubricated, or maybe it's just a plastic or a nylon or something. Other parts, the spring, which is in a rubber tube, and this component has spot welded on bracket on the end. So channel sheet metal fabricated that's spot welded to this, and in that runs this little fixed piece. It's riveted on, doesn't rotate, but it's got a little ball bearing in that's obviously got a spring behind it, so that runs in that channel, and the ball bearing just bears on the back surface, so it's full of grease. So I'll just put these bits together, show you what it looks like. Oh, these parts, this washer that sits on there, and is going to go between, get it right around these components. That's right, that slides on there, that goes on there, and then there's this washer, fancy washer, which is dished, so I assume that's some sort of spring, and then this nut, which is a squashed nut, I think they call them K-nut, which screws on and just nips this up so it can, these parts can rotate without being clamped together. So I'm just going to pop a bit of grease on these parts and assemble them up. So it is assembled. So you can see the action. There's this pivot, and it goes past that centre point and goes down. I don't want to chop my fingers off, so I'm not going to force it. So I'll get the window cleaned up and see about fixing this into the car, I think. I have it in place. This is fiddly. So I think we've seen that I've got the two runners in, and this has to go on after the two runners. When you put the window in, you've got to hook this into the slot, at least one of them. I found it was easier just to have one. Then offer the window up into the front groove, and then you can just lift it over this and get it into the back groove, so maybe easier without that in place first, but you soon need to put it back in place. Then get the front one of those in, and then you can slide it along and push this up and get these two screws in, and then you have to fiddle around and slide the thing up and down and adjust the position of these two runners to get it to run evenly. I've found I've had to push the bottom of this one back as far as I can and relieve that one a little bit, move that one forward, because I was trying to get that to fit against the frame, so it's a real juggling act, but it's in, and I've got this little lock in at the moment, so you can't push the window down because this lock's in place. So if I lift that out, should lift it out without, yeah it does, without me having to lift the window up. So that's now in the open unlock position, and it will slide down. Yeah, it's all very tight. You can see these heads, these are the screws that have had the half the head thickness shaved off, and it's necessary because when I didn't have that quite tight it just caught on the glass, and this looks incredibly tight to all the window. It is just incredibly tight all round. And the idea is you position it where you want and it'll stay there. It gets tighter to the bottom. There's just ultimately there's no room if you want, well, it's all, if you want to get that to fit to the frame neatly. I was pushing this as far back as I could because I didn't want to change the angle of that. Lovely. So, very happy. I think that deserves a cup of tea. Great. Just do it again. Oh, and I've put this in loosely. So that's the thing you will lift it up and down with. Marvellous. So I now have an operating door. I've had to adjust the lock again to get that to... I don't want to slam it yet because I haven't got the rubber seals in, but that's fixed in. I'm happy with the door fit. It's not sticking out at all. It's got glass in the side. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. Oh, magnificent. Got the driver's door in place now and the lock on it. So I haven't tightened up the lock too much yet. So next stage, get the glass in and those window runners on again. I've discovered something about this top trim that goes on the door, which I haven't fixed in place here yet. Which maybe I should have realised before. However, you can see that the top of the door is slightly curved and this piece I've made is straight, and I've just made it as a straight angle. So that's clear, it's just got a notch in the end, but it's just yeah, a very simple folded angle. So the piece that drops down into the door, you put these little clips on. Put it flat on my hand, so maybe that's a bit clearer what it is. So you hammer that or push that clip onto this edge that goes down, that way around. Oops, sorry, off screen there. So it'll push on that way. It's got some little barbs which are going to lock it on, and then it gives you a little hook to hook on the piece with the brush. I'll just get a bit of that. There you are, it's this sort of stuff that's got a brush down one edge. So you can imagine that hook just hooks on that, so you end up with brush on the inside against the window. The side window. So they'll go together like that. That little clip. Holding those two pieces together. Hopefully you get the idea. Which is all well and good. So far, so good. I've now realised how it works because I've been examining the older piece more closely. So here's the original piece. This side's actually nearly intact. A few holes in it. So it was rotten. But I left one of the clips in place here, so we could see which way around that little clip works. Hopefully you can see that. And if you look at the piece it's clipped to, it's quite a complex shape. In fact, it's very, very thin and it's folded back on itself and into quite a complex shape, as I've said. Which is the best way to show it? Maybe you can see the section. So yeah, starts underneath, because I've got this upside down, so this is top surface. Starts underneath, comes back, crush fold, comes back this way, up that way. Ooh. Oh, it's even more complicated than that. So it actually starts, we might say it starts there, little hook comes down, out, crush fold, back round and out. So that's a bit squashed here, but there's a gap. Sorry, there's a gap there, and there's a slot. So it's like there's a slot here coming in this way and a slot here coming in this way. That slot hooks onto the top edge of the door. Remember, I've got this upside down. Let's put it the right way up. So this is the top. This is the driver's door side. That hooks onto the top edge of the door. Remember me showing you that the door is slightly bent. So that, once it's hooked on, would follow the contour of the door really well. And then you've got this slot down here. And that slot is used to clamp it. Oops. To clamp it. So the vertical downward slot is used for this bracket to slot into. So that would slot into there. So that bracket, you can imagine, oh, that clips in the way, but that bracket would slot into that vertical slot. So this slots on the edge of the door, and then this screws against the door. I think I've got it the right way around. Let me show you the bit on the door. Okay, so we're looking at the inside of the driver's door, or right hand door, and you can see here there's a spire clip, okay, blue, because I left it on whilst it was painted, but it shoves on through that hole. There's one on the other door, same idea. And then I've got this bracket, bit of aluminium with a massive great big self-tapper. It's not self-tapper, is it? But the type of screw that goes into a spire clip. And that, I'm as certain as I can be, goes that way up. So much noise. So that edge would slot into this vertical slot to fix it onto the car. So you can imagine it's going to slot onto that vertical slot that I showed you before, and then you could clamp that, and remember there's that other slot that slots it onto the door. So it slots onto the door, slots down into that, and that will clamp it at this front edge. Voila! At the back edge, this sitting on the top of the door, there's a hole, and it has a screw that goes down into the top of the back edge of the door. So my new piece doesn't have any of those dual slot arrangements, so I think all I can do is gently bend it to follow the shape of the top of the door, and glue it on with some sort of sealant, silicone sealant I guess. So I'll have to follow this profile and then just bond it down, because that clamp will do nothing for me. So it's a shame, these pieces are just so thin and really very complex, and they obviously just trapped a load of water and just rotted away, and I imagine they are completely irreplaceable unless somebody fancies forming that out of really thin material for us and chrome plating it. I've masked up the door to leave an area where I'm going to apply some glue, Evo stick, so all around, up the front and along there, to stick door seal, which I've got outside. It's quarter section, open in the middle. Hope you can see that. Oh, there we go. It's like a foam, but with definitely not a foam skin. It's like got a skin on it. So it's similar to the original seal. It was from Woolies, and I've just stuck some masking tape to the outside. I'm going to put some glue on that, Evo stick type stuff, contact adhesive, and see if I can glue it to the door. Glue the seal and put this block mechanism back in place. So that's the root of the seal I've used, and I've just got plenty left over there. You can just see that the seal is just touching there. This is not quite closed. So it is going to do something, and you can see down here where it's going to pull up against this edge. So if I close it, just see if I can get a light in. That's fully closed. So the seal at the top's touching, and I would say it is touching around there. So I assume it's touching where it disappears in there. But as you go along the bottom of the door, you can see, just as I can, that it's not touching there. You can see the blue of the bottom of the door opening. So, is it touching up there? Can we see? Get a light in. What do you think? Just about. Maybe it is as it goes further along. I'm not so sure about the front edge. Can we see? Jury's out on that one. So, well, it's probably how they were. I definitely haven't adjusted the door in that respect, and it's well fitting. So I think that's just the way it is. I'll probably get a draft underneath the door as you ride along. This is the little device I've used to get the glue on quite neatly. It's got a brush arrangement, and you pump up the glue through the brush, and then it's got this cover thing to cover it. You can unscrew the brush and clean it with solvent, which you obviously have to do as the glue sort of dries on the brush. Very handy. I've been fitting this strip. Don't know if you can see, if I can get the camera angle right. Don't think I can get it down far enough. It's a long curve, so it dishes down in the centre, so I've had to just bend this strip to make it fit, and now I'm going to fit the little brush strip to it. Push these little clips on the edge of my chrome piece, and that's where the brush bit's going to hook in. The brush bit I've got is too tall, so I've got these little notches and folded it over, which actually makes it grip a little bit better. So I've pushed the brush bit onto the little clips, so you get the idea, hopefully. So this is the gap it's filling. And so as the brush is up against the glass, just fills that gap nicely. So I'm going to glue this on with some silicone sealant because I don't have the proper clamp arrangement, but I have bent it so it's sat nicely in place. I'm tempted not to put a screw in here at the moment, just till I'm happy that it's all working correctly. So I might just tape that in place, glue it down, and then if I'm happy with it, I'll screw it in place. Might even cheat and glue a screw head on there so that I don't have to drill it in case I ever want to do anything different with it. We'll see. So there it is. That's a chance to set overnight. So that's now fixed in place. Very happy with that. Looks much nicer with that in place now. It's a horrible gap. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Not sure what the next video might be. Still plenty to do. So thanks for watching.